Hello everyone and welcome to my Soap Twist 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The sun dropped low over Los Angeles, sending a warm golden glow across the huge Forrester home. Inside, the air was thick with anxiety, the type that clung to the walls and permeated every speech. Will Spencer sat in the living room, his fingers pounding against the armrest of the leather couch, his thoughts racing. His mother, Katie Logan, had summoned him for what she described as an urgent family meeting. The phrase alone made him nervous. Family sessions in the Forrester-Spencer orbit were rarely filled with positive news. Katie stood at the fireplace, arms folded, her expression unreadable. Across from her, Electra Forrester walked near the window, her customary confidence replaced by a nervous energy. Will's gaze flew between them, attempting to put the puzzle together before anyone spoke. The room felt smaller than normal, with the weight of unspoken words crushing down on everyone. "Will," Katie began, her voice firm but tinged with something he couldn't quite identify. Fear, perhaps? "There's something we need to tell you." He leaned forward, his jaw clenching. "So, what's going on?" "You're freaking me out," Katie said, looking at Electra, who stopped pacing and turned to face him. Her dark eyes widened, and her lips parted as if to speak, but no words emerged. The silence was awful until Katie broke it. "I'm pregnant," she announced, her voice barely above a whisper. Will froze. His mother's comments struck him like a freight train, knocking the air out of his lungs. Pregnant? At her age? He blinked, attempting to digest the information, his mind racing for an answer. Before he could respond, Electra came forward, her hands twisting together. "And so am I," she answered, her voice shaking but firm. Will's head swung toward her, and his eyes widened. "What?" The word came out sharper than he had intended, a combination of astonishment and alarm. He looked from Electra to Katie and back again, as if expecting one of them to laugh and say it was all a joke. But their expressions were dead serious. "Both of you," he managed, his voice cracking. At the same time, Katie nodded, her hand naturally landing on her stomach. "This is unexpected, Will. I understand that this is a lot to take in." He gave a quick, disbelieving laugh and ran his hand through his dark hair. "Mom, you're not quite in your 20s. And Electra," he looked at her, his expression softening slightly. "You're what, just out of college? How did this even occur?" Electra's cheeks reddened, and she turned aside, her gaze fixed on the ground. "It just did. Will, I did not plan for this. Neither of us did." The room spun for a while as Will tried to process the double surprise. His mother is pregnant. His cousin, Electra, is pregnant. Two ladies he loved about, each facing a future that was suddenly more complicated than they could have imagined. He stood up, pacing, his head whirling with questions and emotions. How were they going to handle it? What did it mean for their family, already torn apart by years of strife and secrets? And why did it seem like the cosmos was pulling a cosmic trick on them? Katie had always been the family's rock, keeping things together when everything else broke apart. She'd raised Will primarily on her own, managing the upheaval of the Forrester and Spencer dynasties with quiet determination. But now, as she stood there with her hand still on her stomach, she appeared vulnerable in a manner Will had never seen before. "I didn't think this was possible," she said, her voice gentle. "I thought that part of my life had ended, but when I saw the doctor last week, they confirmed it. I'm about 3 months along." Will paused, his gaze fixed on her. "3 months? You've known for a while and haven't told me?" "I needed time to process it myself," Katie explained, her tone asking for understanding. "It wasn't exactly planned, Will." The mention of his father, Bill Spencer, caused Will's gut to twist. Bill was a force of energy, a man who pushed through life with equal parts charm and ruthlessness. At this point in his life, the prospect of him becoming a father again seemed absurd. Almost. "Does Dad know?" Will inquired, his voice quiet. Katie nodded. "I told him yesterday." Will snorted, saying, "He's processing." "Yeah, I bet he is." He imagined his father's reaction, shock, followed by a rapid shift to some great plan to fix the issue, as if a baby was simply another business contract to negotiate. He turned to Electra, who had been silent, her arms curled over herself as if to protect herself from the weight of the situation. "And you?" he inquired, his tone softer now. "Who is the—" He trailed off, unsure whether he had the right to ask. Electra's lips pinched into a thin line, and for a moment, he thought she might not respond. Then she moaned, her shoulders slumped. "It is complicated, Will. Let's just say the father isn't in the picture right now." Will's heart dropped. He'd always been protective of Electra, even when they were kids roaming around the Forrester estate and getting into trouble together. She was more like a sister than a cousin, and the thought of her going through this alone made his chest ache. "Are you all right?" he inquired, coming closer. Her eyes shone with unshed tears, but she managed a slight nod. "I will be. I didn't expect this. I thought I had my life worked out. College, my employment at Forrester Creations, and everything. And now—" She indicated vaguely to her stomach. "This changes everything." Will was speechless. He wanted to solve everything and make life easy for both of them, but he felt powerless. The weight of their confessions fell on him, crushing and unyielding. 2 pregnancies, 2 women he loved, 2 futures that were now inextricably linked. The days after were a whirl of emotions and uncomfortable conversations. Will felt himself caught in the middle, attempting to support his mother and Electra while also dealing with his own emotions. The Forrester mansion, which is typically a center of bustle and drama, seemed eerily silent, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Katie poured herself into preparing, as she often does when confronted with uncertainty. She spent hours researching prenatal care, visiting with doctors, and organizing her schedule to accommodate the upcoming changes. Will looked at her with a mixture of adoration and concern. She looked powerful, but he could see the strain in her eyes, and her grin faltered when she thought no one was watching. Electra, on the other hand, appeared to recede inward. She spent several hours in her chamber at the estate, drawing plans for Forrester Creations or staring out the window, lost in meditation. Will attempted to reach out and be there for her, but she was guarded, her typical spark dulled by the weight of her position. One evening, he discovered her in the yard, seated on a stone bench, surrounded by beautiful roses. The air was cold, and the sky was striped with pinks and purples as the sun went down. She appeared little and vulnerable, not like the bold, aggressive woman he knew. "Hey," he remarked, sitting next to her. "Are you okay?" She did not glance at him, keeping her gaze fixed on the horizon. "I do not know, Will. I keep wondering what this signifies. I'm not ready to be a mother. I'm not even sure if I want to be." Her words hung between them, raw and honest. Will hesitated before reaching for her hand and giving her a soft squeeze. "You don't have to have all the answers right now," he told me. "You have time. And you've got me. I'm not going away." She turned to face him, her gaze seeking his. "How about you? How are you handling all of this?" "It's a lot. Your mom and me," the speaker exclaims. "Honestly, I'm kind of stressing out. I am going to be a big brother again, and you're going to be a mother. It's like the world has turned upside down overnight," Electra said with a faint smile. "Yeah, tell me about it." They sat quietly for a moment, the noises of the garden filling the gap between them. Crickets chirping, leaves rustling in the breeze. For the first time in days, Will felt a spark of hope. Everyone was in this together. It would be difficult, but they might be able to figure it out. As the weeks and months passed, the truth of the pregnancies became clear. Katie's baby bump became more noticeable, and she began to glow in the manner that pregnant women typically did, despite the problems. Bill, to his credit, stepped up in his own way, albeit his support was frequently accompanied by overwhelming protectiveness, which drove Katie crazy. Electra, meanwhile, began to regain her footing. She put herself into her job at Forrester Creations, pouring her passion into daring new designs that drew the attention of the fashion industry. But there were times late at night when Will saw her sketching frantically, tears soaking the sheets. He never pushed her to talk, instead sitting with her and offering silent companionship. The family rallied around them, albeit not without the usual Forrester-Spencer conflict. Ridge and Brooke, Electra's grandparents, were encouraging but opinionated, offering counsel that frequently contradicted Katie's realistic approach. Liam, Will's half-brother, was cautiously excited, but he couldn't stop cracking jokes about the Spencer baby boom. Even Steffi, the pragmatic, offered Electra a position designing a new maternity line, which gave her a feeling of purpose. But behind the surface, a melancholy lurked. Katie's concern was of beginning over, of raising a child in a world that seemed more uncertain than ever. For Electra, it was the weight of an unanticipated future, the loss of the life she had imagined for herself. Will's pain came from witnessing the people he cared about struggle, knowing there was only so much he could do to help. One rainy afternoon, Will found himself alone in the Forrester home, the house silent save for the patter of rain against the windows. He walked inside the study, where old family portraits hung on the walls, capturing brighter times before the scandals and betrayals that had defined their lives. There was a photo of him and Electra as children, smiling for the camera with ice cream smeared on their faces. Another photo of Katie and Bill when they were young and in love. He traced a finger over a photograph of his mother, his heart sad. She had been through a lot: heartbreak, illness, and the relentless push and pull of their dysfunctional family. And now this. A new baby, a new chapter, and she needed to rest. His thoughts turned to Electra, and the dread in her eyes when she informed him she wasn't ready. He wanted to protect her, shield her from the unknown, but he knew he couldn't. All he could do was be present, through the long nights and difficult days, through the excitement and anguish of what was ahead. The sound of the front door opening interrupted his thoughts. Electra went inside, shaking the rain off her coat. When she saw him in the study, she paused, a faint smile pulling on her lips. "You look like you're carrying the weight of the world," she added, crossing the room to join him. Will chuckled, but it lacked comedy. "Just thinking about how crazy this whole thing is." She nodded, her gaze drawn to the images on the wall. "Yeah. But, you know what? We are Forresters and Spencers. We've been through worse." He looked at her, astonished by the conviction in her voice. "You sound like you're starting to believe that." She shrugged, but her eyes showed a new resolution. "Perhaps I am. I mean, I don't have a choice. This baby is coming, whether I'm ready or not. And I'm not doing this alone. I've got you, Katie, and the entire crazy family." Will smiled, a genuine one this time. "Damn right you do." They remained there for a time together, the rain still falling outside. The future was unpredictable, filled with obstacles they couldn't foresee. But in that instant, Will felt a quiet strength wash over him. They were a messy, complicated family united by love and resilience. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. The months passed, and the pregnancies continued. Katie's baby, a girl, they discovered, was healthy, and despite the occasional fright, the doctors were hopeful. Electra's pregnancy was more problematic, with bouts of nausea and weariness that left her exhausted, but she persevered, and her designs for Forrester Creations received accolades and gave her a sense of control. Will became their anchor, the one who listened when they needed to vent, and helped them laugh when the weight of it all seemed too much. He transported Katie to her appointments, sat with Electra during late-night brainstorming sessions, and patiently handled Bill's outrageous nursery decor suggestions. As the deadlines approached, the house buzzed with excitement. Baby showers were organized, nurseries were adorned, and the family began to adjust to the prospect of new life in their midst. There were still moments of doubt and worry, but they were balanced by an increasing sense of hope. Will stood on the mansion's balcony one evening as the sun sank over Los Angeles, gazing out at the city lights. Katie followed him, resting her hand on her large stomach. "Are you okay, kiddo?" she inquired, her tone gentle. He nodded, a slight smile on his lips. "Yeah, I'm just ready for whatever comes next." She gently squeezed his hand. "Do you realize you're going to be a fantastic big brother?" And you're going to be an excellent mother. Again, he murmured, his voice full of emotion. They stood there silently, watching the city glow beneath them. Inside, Electra was sketching, her laughter ringing through the halls as she discussed her latest designs with Steffi. The future remained unpredictable, but for the first time in a long time, Will felt prepared to confront it. The double pregnancy revelation had rattled them, forcing them to confront their anxieties and hopes. But it also brought them closer together, reminding them of the strength they drew from one another. And as the stars appeared in the night sky, Will knew that no matter what problems awaited them, they'd overcome them together. Will sat in the quiet living room, the refrigerator's gentle hum, the only sound breaking through the dense calm. He could still hear her voice echoing in his ears, the words repeating themselves despite the fact that she had only said them once. I'm pregnant too. It wasn't supposed to be possible, or true, but Electra's eyes didn't waver when she said it. Her lips trembled, her hands clenched into fists at her sides, but her voice was steady enough to assure him it wasn't a cruel joke. She meant it, and the truth fell between them like broken glass on the floor, glittering, hazardous, and impossible to walk around without getting cut. Will had been clinging to a weak kind of happiness for several months. He had been planning for fatherhood with someone else, the lady he believed would hold his future in her hands. That news had shaken him enough, but he tried to accept it. He had begun to envision what it might be like to hold a baby, to see his features reflected in someone so small, and to develop into a role he had never imagined himself performing. He was already exhausted by the thought of being responsible for one life. And now this. 2 lives. 2 distinct women. 2 separate storylines collided. Shame twisted his insides like a knife. Electra stood there, her hair falling about her face like a curtain and her body quivering as if she had just stepped into a hurricane. She hadn't intended to tell him like way. She hadn't intended on telling him today. But she couldn't take it anymore. The sickness in her body had grown, the exhaustion clung to her, and every time she tried to see her future without telling the truth, her chest squeezed till she could not breathe. So she told him, and the air in the room became thick with something they couldn't escape. I didn't want to do this to you, she muttered, her gaze scouring his face for any evidence of tenderness, any indication that he wouldn't break into a million pieces. But I could not keep it a secret. Not from you. Not anymore, Will said, pressing his palms against his temples as if he could make his brain rewind and undo everything. Electra, you cannot be serious. This cannot be happening. But it is, she continued, her voice firmer now, almost rebellious. I'm pregnant, and this is yours. I don't expect you to celebrate, nor do I expect you to accept it right now. But I need you to understand that this isn't just my life anymore. It's ours. He couldn't stand the heaviness of the phrase. He'd already dedicated himself to someone else and gotten his brain around an untenable circumstance. But 2? His thoughts raced in circles, looking for a way out, a way to pretend that one truth was more genuine than the other. He wanted to escape, immerse himself in work, and disappear into the elements of his life that did not require feeling. But he could not. Not with Electra staring at him, as if her entire existence hinged on his every breath. She had once been his secret, his escape, the woman who could see through his defenses when no one else could. Their time together had been snatched, reckless, and hazardous, yet it had provided him with a level of comfort he hadn't had in years. He convinced himself that it was only temporary, that he would leave and she would forget him. But now there was no getting away. There was no forgetting. A child brought them together in ways neither of them had ever desired. Electra turned away from him and collapsed onto the couch, her hands caressing her still flat tummy as if the gesture alone might protect the life within. Tears welled in her eyes, not because she grieved the baby, but because she regretted everything that had brought her here. She had fallen in love with someone who belonged to someone else, and she had convinced herself she was capable of handling the repercussions. But this was more than she expected. Will wanted to scream, demand answers, and strike out at the universe for putting him in this situation. Instead, he sat across from her, face pale and body trembling. Do you even understand what this means? He asked, his voice breaking. It means there's going to be a child, she remarked quietly. A child who did not want to get caught in the middle of our turmoil. I'm not sure what else it signifies yet. I can't pretend to know all the answers. But I know I can't do it alone. The words wounded him. He was already being tugged in two directions and unable to hold himself together, and now Electra was telling him not to let go. A part of him wanted to run away from her, deny everything, and scream that it wasn't his. But the memories of their nights together came flooding back, unmistakable proof that she was telling the truth. The silence between them was long and unpleasant. Will finally let out a broken laugh, which sounded more like a sob. There are 2 children. 2 separate mothers. Do you know how insane this is? How impossible? Electra's chin lifted as tears ran down her cheeks. It is not impossible. It is happening, whether you want to confront it or not. After she departed, Will sat alone in the dark. He reflected on the life he had promised to one woman, the delicate bliss he had been attempting to create, and how it would all come crashing down once she discovered the truth. He thought of Electra, her calm courage and fervent hope that he would not desert her. And he thought of the 2 children who would take pieces of him into a world that now felt too heavy to bear.